A corporation is a legal entity created by one or more persons to achieve a certain societal or business goal. Most entrepreneurs create a corporation to shield their personal wealth from lawsuits or creditors. If a corporation goes broke, your only liability is your current investment in that corporation. Other investors can't repossess your Tesla, your boat, any of your homes, or that shiny new Rolex, regardless of how you guided that business. A corporation entity has many of the same rights as a person. It can sue or be sued. They can spend money in political campaigns. They can refuse to support federal mandates on religious grounds. People like you and me can own shares of a corporation. The more shares you own, the more of the company you own. Shareholders also have the right to vote for the corporation's board of directors. It's usually one vote for every share that you own. Back in the 1980s, the former CEO of General Electric, Jack Welch, stated that shareholders' money should be used to earn a higher return than they could earn themselves by investing in other assets having the same amount of risk. Welch's stated aim was to be the biggest or second biggest market player and to return maximum value to stockholders. Since then, corporations have had one goal: looking after the interests of the shareholders. However, not many people foresaw that goal might work against the organization and society. Executives might conspire with shareholders interested in short-term gains to extract value from the corporation at the expense of customers, employees, the organization itself, the community in which the organization operated, and ultimately society as a whole. Which brings us to question number 1. Should the chairman of the board and CEO roles be split? Common sense states that separating the roles would be a better governance structure for shareholders, because it provides a better balance of power. However, since many wealthy shareholders and executives have common interests, American companies seem to ignore this question. Let's look at the difference between CEO and chairman, or any board of directors member for that matter. A CEO is the chief executive officer of a company. He's the captain of the ship, the man or woman to whom all other executives report. The CEO is ultimately responsible for all day-to-day activities of the entire corporation. A few times a year, the CEO has to report the current state of the business and earnings to the board of directors. A CEO is held accountable by the board of directors and is expected to follow board advice and direction and implement board decisions, but he or she is not bound by the decisions of the board. CEOs at the top 500 American companies earn an average of over $13 million a year. The board of directors is essentially a team of 9 to 11 members on average, and it's their job to recommend strategy and financial goals for the corporation, which is then to be implemented by the CEO. It is also the responsibility of the board to act on behalf of the shareholders to provide independent oversight of publicly traded companies' management and operations. Typically, in the United States, board members are either large shareholders of the corporation or current or former leaders of unrelated corporations. Shareholders vote for board members, so the more shares you own, the more votes you get. Own enough shares, and you could vote yourself a seat on the board. They meet a few times a year and talk about results and future strategy. It's not uncommon for a CEO or board member to sit on 2 or more boards of other companies. In 2015, more than 4 out of every 10 American CEOs sat on another board. Board members in large corporations earn an average of over $270,000 a year. Not too bad for a part-time job. A chairman of the board is elected. Since the board oversees the CEO and a chairman leads the board, you might think that the chairman is the CEO's boss. but not really. All members of a board are considered peers. Therefore, board decisions are not the sole responsibility of the chairman. Hiring and firing a CEO is typically the role of the entire board and not just one individual. So here's the dilemma. More than half of the Fortune 500 companies have combined the roles of CEO and chairman of the board. To the average person, you would think there's a conflict of interest. How can the chairman of a board be objective when evaluating his own performance as a CEO? Well, he really can't. It seems like most companies have decided that board independence is overrated. A 2012 study by Harvard Law School found that the cost of paying one person as CEO and chairman was significantly higher than paying two people, one as a CEO and one as a non-executive chairman. The study also found that long-term shareholder returns were significantly better at companies that had separated the roles. According to Stanford University, using a two-tier system also results in more monitoring, less aggressive performance targets, and the dissemination of power by not allowing the CEO to be chairman. The model of an executive CEO and a non-executive chairman has been adopted in most other economies, including Germany, Finland, Poland, Austria, the Netherlands, and even China. So why is the U.S. so resistant? Increases in executive pay come at the expense of shareholder profits, although most understand that competitive pay helps to keep talent in the business. It is the board of directors that votes to increase executive pay. Which brings us to question number 2. When the CEO is also the chairman, is it fair to shareholders that a CEO is allowed to vote on his or her own compensation? In many small companies, the CEO also serves as chairman of the board. Typically, this is the case with companies that have grown rapidly and still retain the initial founder in those roles. But as a small company becomes large, holding both roles reduces the effectiveness of the board. A board led by an independent chair is more likely to identify and monitor areas of the company that are drifting from its course and put into place corrective measures to get it back on track. In 2002, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, legislated as a response to several high-profile corporate failures, set out stronger regulations for corporate oversight, including a requirement that the audit committee consist of only external board members. This means that no member of management can sit on the audit committee. However, because the committee is a subgroup of the board of directors and reports directly to the chairman, having the CEO in the chair role limits the effectiveness of the committee. Finally, question number 3. Should a CEO be allowed to sit on the board of directors at all? Based on what you've just seen and heard, what do you think?